Today on Locked On Red Wings, how big is the gap between Detroit and the conference finalists?
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. I'm a podcast producer for the Daily J, a WWJ news radio podcast. Well, Scotty's the host over at Locked On Tigers, as well as a freelance journalist for the Detroit News. And today, guys, episode's going to be kind of, loosey-goosey. You know what I mean? Like, just going to riff a little bit here and there. Our main question in today's episode is simply going to be, how big is the gap between the Detroit Red Wings and the other conference finalists that are, still remaining in the Stanley Cup Finals? Obviously, the Florida Panthers have a 3-0 lead over the Carolina Hurricanes, and as of recording this, the Stars have a 2-0 deficit to the Vegas Golden Knights right now as we record this here today. By the time you guys are listening to this, you probably will already know the outcome. But it just leads the question. One, we haven't really talked a whole lot about the teams in the playoffs as of yet. And, I mean, if we want to make it Red Wings centric, we just got to ask the question, like, what separates the Red Wings from those teams? And, you hear us talk a lot about star power, scoring. I mean, that number one, Scotty, that's the number one thing. But there's a couple other factors that play into what is the biggest gap between us and them.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I think the cool thing about just like kind of opening this up to the entire postseason is we can kind of have this conversation with just playoff teams in general, not necessarily just the conference final teams. But if we were to start in the East, and we go, oh, well, how far away are we from the 8 seed? Well, same conversation as far as 8 seed as to conference final, obviously, with the Panthers having their run. So I think that, I mean, it's really easy to just point and say the biggest thing is that, like, overpowering, I guess is the word, like, superstar caliber player. Like, that's something that not only is looked at if you're looking at the conference final teams, but if you're just looking really, I mean, Carolina, I guess, is kind of weird, but like if you're just looking across the entire panel of the postseason, that's something that kind of trumps all. Is somebody on your team that has that like crazy high, like well over a point a game, 100-point score in the regular season type of talent. And that's kind of the biggest. We can get more intricate with it. I mean, we have a half hour to talk about it here. We can get more intricate with it and start talking about like the really specific and niche differences. But I mean, if you want to start really general, I think that that's a pretty obvious place to start.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you look at all four of these teams, they're all in the top 15 in goals for. Florida Panthers sit at 6, Vegas is at 7, Dallas at 14, and Carolina at 15. And if you look at the goals against, it's again the same thing. They're all teams that are really good at scoring goals and preventing goals. Carolina especially is really good. It's when you look at there's 3 things really, Scotty, that tend to separate the Red Wings from those 3 things. And we can even lead the conversation off, go team by team if you want. You kind of mentioned it already, the Florida Panthers starting in division, and the fact that Red Wings were 12 points shy of a wild card. And that was the Florida Panthers. They're the 8th seed, and now they're in the Eastern Conference Final. Those 3 things that each of these 3 teams have, the Red Wings lack to different degrees, is, in my opinion, youth, depth, and star power. Red Wings had a lot of youth on their side. Go ahead.
Yeah, the other thing that I want to just throw in here, we can get back to it more in depth later if you want, or we can just kind of include it in this, is star power as far as production in the postseason. Goaltending is very much included into that mix, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we have seen time and time again, not only this season with Bobrovsky, but just over the last, back to those like the Preds team that made a miracle run, right? With Raskin, that like we've seen so often. If a goalie turned Jake Ottinger a year ago, right? Like we've seen it time and time again. Like if a team or if a goalie stands on his head and really just goes supernova, that can absolutely carry a team as well. And that's very obviously something that the Red Wings. That's one of their biggest team needs this offseason, is adding to the depth and just talent in between the pipes. So that's another thing I just wanted to throw in there.
You bring up goaltending carrying, and yes, the Florida Panthers have youth. The Red Wings do have youth. So like when you're looking at the boxes, the Red Wings have the check. They have the youth. Their depth is getting there, so it's like a half check.
Yeah.
Star power they significantly lack. And the Florida Panthers went all in and made a gamble this offseason, trading away Huberdeau, who was over 100-point player, 28 years old, about to do a extension, and Mackenzie Weegar, who's a fantastic defenseman, who's in that window as well, and got Matthew Tkachuk out of it. When we talked to Armando Velez, one of the things he brought up during the preseason crossover is that he expected the Florida Panthers to slide out of the divisional spot and into a wild card. Now, I think they did slide back farther than he initially thought, not clinching a wild card until like literally the last week of the season, but they got that wild card. But the payoff he was expecting, and he said this, the payoff Armando was expecting came sooner. He said, long term, this is going to be a better outcome for the Florida Panthers because they got younger. They got a guy who they have more control over, and the ceiling for Tkachuk is yet to be written. And it helps with cap because now you're not paying two guys, you're paying one. And look at what it's done. Matthew Tkachuk has been a bona fide stud in the playoffs, and they're now one game away from a Stanley Cup final. The Florida Panthers are everything the Red Wings should be looking to be. Like when it comes to a young upcoming team with star power, like that is exactly what the Red Wings should be shooting for. They just need to get that stud, that star.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and if we just want to talk about how great Armando's been over at Locked On Panthers, he has predicted so much of this. It's actually insane. He talked in the preseason about in the regular season, maybe sliding back to a wild card, and then going into the postseason said like everybody should be terrified of the Panthers, regardless of their seeding and regardless of the fact that they play Boston in the first round, just because they are built for the postseason, right? Like that's a real thing. You can have a roster that is built for the playoffs and built for the regular season. Like we've seen the President's trophy curse, right? Like we've seen time and time again, so many teams that are quote unquote built for the regular season and can't get it done. And we've seen these teams in the last 7-8 years that have been one of the lower like seeded teams in the postseason make runs. And the thing that like the Panthers have two big things going for them, and that's star power of Matthew Tkachuk and an absolute like all-time historic heater in net from Sergei Bobrovsky. And
that carries you.
Right. And that's in the playoffs. That's what you need. You need star-level production offensively, and you need a goalie that is on his head. And the Florida Panthers have gotten that to an extreme to both of them. Like it would, if the postseason ended today magically, the Conn Smythe, it would probably just have to go to Bob, but like it would be 1-2 Bob and Tkachuk pretty comfortably. I don't even think anyone's really close to either of them.
The Panthers have won 10 of their last 11 games ever since Bobrovsky took over for Lyon. And in terms of youth, again, the Panthers have 7 players on their roster, age 30 or over, 2 of which are goalies. So only 5 skaters over 30 years old. And you didn't even mention Barkov as well. They have Sasha Barkov, who's phenomenal. So they got the youth, they got the depth, they got the star power. And like Armando said, they may have taken a step back this year, but they could be looking to take a huge step forward in the divisional race, especially, I'm saying this with trepidation, but if Boston slides a little, if Bergeron and Krejci retire, they could see a small step back. And that could leave a room for the Florida Panthers to get back in that divisional race. If the Toronto Maple Leafs shake up, if Tampa Bay is finally starting to show its age, like you're starting to see cracks where other teams could break through, like Florida, who could become a consistent divisional threat. Buffalo could be a consistent divisional threat. Detroit, if they can get that star.
Ottawa.
I don't want to say Ottawa because I say Ottawa every single year, and every single year they miss the playoffs. So I don't know.
Well, yeah, but we both had Ottawa missing the playoffs this year, and I still think at least, I guess I'm not going to speak for you. I still think they're headed in a decent direction.
I think they're heading in the right direction too. I hesitate to ever say their name. For the record, you mentioned Sergei Bobrovsky just being an absolute stud. Goals saved above expected. Well, first of all, easy one. His save percentage right now is like .935, and since taking over full time for Lyon, his save percentage is like 9.78, something
Yeah.
ridiculous. He's only let in 3 goals in 3 games against the Carolina Hurricanes. Not that they're a high offense team. That's not the style they play. They're like the exception to the rule, the conference finals teams, if you ask me.
For
But
sure.
like he's been insane. His
Well,
goals saved above expected, Scotty, is 19.76 in the playoffs.
Yeah.
He's almost 20, he saves 20 goals more than expected in the playoffs. That is insane.
It's one of the best like postseason goaltender performances since we were able to record this data. I think in 08 or 09. It's like one of the 3 or 4 best goalie postseason runs literally ever.
The next best goalie
literally ever in the last like 20 years.
The next best goalie of the active goaltenders is Adin Hill, which is at 7, which Adin Hill, I mean, he deserves some shout out too, because nobody expected this out of him, especially after that trade from San Jose. But we'll talk about Vegas in their own time. But Scotty, do you have any final thoughts on Florida before I get to this break?
No, I really want to get into, I want to talk about the Canes a little bit more, because I think that's, like you said, kind of the exception of the rule in the sense of like, they don't have like an 110 point kind of like offensive output on their team and are still here and are still a threat. So I wanted to kind of riff about them.
Yeah, absolutely. When we will do that. But first, I got to talk to the people about eBay Motors. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With guaranteed eBay fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know your part will fit or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, right fit, and right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Scotty and I are talking about what separates the Detroit Red Wings from these teams in the Eastern Conference, or not even the Eastern Conference, but the conference finals as a whole. We're talking about the Florida Panthers, who are up 3-0 over the Carolina Hurricanes. Let's switch, though, and talk about the Carolina Hurricanes, who are, again, down 3-0 to the Florida Panthers. And, you know, what separates Detroit from being a Carolina Hurricanes-esque team, and why are the Carolina Hurricanes now finding themselves struggling in the conference finals?
Yeah, well, I mean, again, it's really easy to point and just say like the lack of offense is catching up to them. But they have also played in 2 overtime games in this series already. Like it's not like it hasn't been a close series or whatnot. It's 1 goal either way. But yeah, the thing that fascinates me about Carolina is the fact that, like you said before the break, there they are the exception to the rule. Like this is a team whose leading point scorer this year had 71 points. Like that's very how much did Larkin end with?
79.
Yeah. So like,
or was it 30? Oh yeah, 79, because he only played 80 games. He was right, 1 point off.
He was 2 games short or whatever. But yeah, like this is a team whose leading point producer this season had comfortably less than the Detroit Red Wings. Like this is not and they had 3 60-point scores, which the Detroit Red Wings obviously didn't have. And like Aho had over 35 goals this season. Like they definitely, I'm not trying to make it sound like they just don't score and they don't have production from anybody. It's certainly a deeper team at the top. But like kind of on yesterday's episode, we were talking about bringing in players that maybe aren't those 40 goal scorers, but can still get you, 68 to 78, maybe even push a point a game type of production. And can this team be successful with just a few of those guys rather than going out and trying to get the bona fide 100, 110 point getter? And this is a team that has done that. And the reason is, we talked about it a lot, but this is a system, right? Like this is the definition of a team that is utilizing and really getting the most out of their system. They have an incredible defensive system in place that just doesn't allow shots on net. They haven't even gotten crazy, like unbelievable goalie play over the last couple of years and have still been really good just because they don't need a great goalie and they don't need an 110-point score when you literally can't get shots off against them. And that's the way that their system's in place. And when comparing it to the Red Wings, obviously Lalonde's system is a little bit more defensive. And I think that if there is any team, even more so than the Panthers, that I look at and I go, like, where is the glimmer of hope of like the Wings, even if we don't get one of these big stars to turn into still a good playoff team? This is the hockey team that I look at.
That's precisely it. That's such a solid point. I think it was The Athletic that wrote an article basically saying, like, all hope is not lost if the Red Wings don't get a superstar, pointing to the Carolina Hurricanes, who, not a great look now being down 3-0 in the conference finals, but to
It's
even
still a
make it,
conference final appearance.
to make it to the conference finals. And you mentioned the goalies thing too. And historically, goalies go to Carolina, have career years, go elsewhere, and fall, regress back to their mean because of the fact the system that they run, which is so oppressive and suppresses shot attempts, makes it really easy for goalies. I mean, they don't give up a lot of shots per game. I think the Panthers in that 1-0 win just last night only had less than, I think it was 28 shots. I think they had 28 shots on net, less than 30. I mean, they do that on a nightly basis. They don't face more than 30 shots on a nightly basis. But to Frederik Andersen's credit, I said Aiden Hill was the second best. I was mistaken. It was Frederik Andersen who was the second best goal save above expected in this playoffs. So not only are they playing their system the way they have been and found their way to the conference final in doing so, Frederik Andersen has also, picked his game up and is the second best goalie remaining in the playoffs at goal saved above expected with 8.44, and his save percentage is 937, which is damn good. But he's just unfortunately on the other side of a Florida Panthers team, which forechecks really hard, and Carolina, who struggles to score goals. It's kind of like the kryptonite almost to the Carolina style. The Florida Panthers are such an overwhelming type of forechecking team that they're actually cracking the armor of the Carolina Hurricanes defense. And because they're so oppressive in the offensive zone with the forecheck, the Carolina Hurricanes team, which struggles to score goals, can't break out of their own zone and create consistent offensive pressure. It's like this perfect storm of like, this is what the Carolina Hurricanes did not need, is just an oppressive offensive forecheck, and that's what the Panthers provide. But that being said, also we mentioned, so obviously the Hurricanes have no 40 goal scorer. They have no player on their team who eclipsed what you said 71 points was their best point getter.
71 was and then their leading goal scorer was Aho, obviously, and he had 36.
And
he was their only 30 goal scorer.
You have to imagine that they might have been able to get to 40 goals if Andrei Svechnikov was completely healthy, or Max Pacioretty didn't have his entire season robbed, because he had 3 goals in 5 games. Incredibly small sample size, but Max Pacioretty is aging like fine wine.
Yeah.
Maybe not 40 goals, but at least an 80-point score. And those two guys provide a lot of the offense. But the Carolina Hurricanes are the exception to the rule because they can make it this far without that offense because of that style, like you said. They made up for the lack of star power by double-checking boxes depth.
Right.
Like, I talk about the three things that a team needs to make it to the conference final is youth, depth, and star power. They're a little bit older on the average age scale, but they just double-checked the depth box.
Guess how many, unless you have the number pull up, unless you have their stats pulled up, but guess off the top of your head how many players they had that had 29 or more points this season.
Oh, yeah, I have it. I do have it pulled up, but it's not sorted by points. So I'm looking over here. I don't want to look at the 5.
They had 13 people have 29 or more points on the season. That is the definition of depth.
Yes. That's like almost your entire.
They had 12 30-point getters, right? And then Fast had, like I said, had 29. But they had literally 12 different people all eclipse 30 points. They had 5 all eclipse 40 and then 3 above 60. So, like, just not overwhelming power, but just checks all the boxes when it comes to depth.
But that's exactly it. Like, if you're not going to have 1 or 2 guys get you 70 to 100 points, you're going to have 5 to 10 guys.
Right.
5's probably a little bit underselling. Probably like 8 to 10 guys who can get you 40 or more. If it's not top heavy, you got to share the wealth. I like to look at this as Toronto and Edmonton are one extreme, where you have 2 to 4 guys who dominate your scoring.
Edmonton for sure.
Yes, you have 2 to 4 guys who dominate your scoring, and you put all your hopes and dreams on those guys to carry your team to success. But in the end, it doesn't work out because you need depth, where Carolina is the other extreme, where that's too much depth, where depth can carry you further, But in the end, you need that guy who can be a game breaker, a game changer to take you over the top. You marry those two things, you know what you get? The Tampa Bay Lightning of the last 4 years.
Yeah, I was going to say the Boston Bruins this year.
Yeah. Well, I said the Tampa Bay because they actually won the
Correct.
cup.
Yeah.
Well,
for
yes.
sure,
If you're talking regular season, Boston, for sure. Like, you got to marry that depth and that star power to get
Tampa
where
is
you're at.
honestly the better example. They have been an absolute juggernaut. They do you remember Tampa? I want to say it was after their first cup. It might have been after their second cup. They had like fourth liners on their team that were getting like top 6 money elsewhere, right? Because they just like couldn't retain everybody just because of how deep of a team they
Well, look
were.
at Andre Palat, right? That's just
Right,
last
Palat was
offseason.
the example I was thinking of. Yeah,
Like, he was like a third. I mean, probably a second or third liner on.
yeah, he
Tampa
was a
Bay,
middle six
goes
guy
to the
on their
Devils,
team.
and
Yeah,
immediately becomes a top sixer. So
right.
that's just how deep they were. We got to take another quick break, and then we'll spend segment 3 talking about the Western Conference. As it's just, God, it's an embarrassment of riches when you talk about the Vegas Golden Knights. It's insane. So stay tuned to Locked On Red Wings. But first, I got to talk to you guys today about Birddogs and Scotty. So I had been talking to the people about how I tried them on, and I liked what I like what I felt. But this past weekend, I went up to the grandparents' cottage, helped them put the boat in the water. Perfect time for me to actually like get some work into these shorts. And I got to tell you, man,
They were amazing.
I absolutely love them. They're like instantly my favorite pair of shorts that I own.
Yeah,
And
same.
like,
I
you know,
golfed in them again like 3 days ago.
I jokingly told my my uncle about like the built-in boxer briefs, partly to make him uncomfortable because like who wants to hear about that, right? But like honest to God, I loved it so much, and because I was doing a lot of work in and out of the water, the way that they're designed, like they got one that's like 90% cotton and one that's like I think no 70% cotton, like 70% polyester.
Yeah.
They both were just perfect because, and like I'm not afraid of getting them wet. They can serve. They're so versatile, and the fact they can serve as like swim trunks. You can wear them casually just around the house. They dry really quickly because of the material that they're made out of, and they're a really stretchy fabric. So like they're pretty much one size fits all. They're just so versatile. They're so comfortable too. Like just wearing them around the house. I'm just like, yeah, I'm chilling. I wore them to the gym on Monday, and they were comfortable to work out in. I ran on the treadmill with them on. So there's incredible amount of versatility, incredible amount of comfort. The fit is fantastic. And it's just like these are shorts that you guys, if you want just top end shorts without having to like pay an arm and a leg for them, you got to go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL, enter promo code LockedOnNHL, and they'll even throw in a Yeti style Bird Dogs mug with every order. So make sure you go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL and enter that promo code LockedOnNHL for that free tumbler. And you guys, I'm telling you, you're going to love these shorts. Segment 3, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Scotty, let's talk about the Western Conference now. More of an abbreviated, well, not abbreviated segment. We'll get a full segment, but we'll have to split one segment between two teams.
Yeah,
well, I think that's okay.
The East is like our direct.
Yeah, we know the Eastern Conference a little bit better because of where the Wings are. So
well, it's just like that's our direct competition too. Like these teams aren't going to get in our way of a postseason run.
Yeah, I completely agree. So which of the two teams you want to talk about first? You want to talk about Dallas, or you want to talk about the Vegas Golden Knights?
I think we save Vegas for last, and the reason why is because I love most of the Dallas Stars. There's one very clear player that we're all not a big fan of on the Dallas Stars, but I love Robertson. He's one of my favorite players to watch in the entire NHL right now. And they, Ottinger in net is always, playoff Otti is a great, he isn't really, I don't know if he's been the same playoff Otti as last year, but he's been pretty good. Like, yeah, they're just a really, I know who's on the team, but like they are, I think, a fun, young, up and coming team that is probably going to be in the postseason mix for honestly the foreseeable future. And I think that's, again, when we're talking about why, they have a guy who's capable of taking over a postseason in net. He's done it before. And they have an 100-point scorer that's very young on their top line. So, like, that checks both of those boxes yet again.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't like the Dallas Stars whatsoever. I did pick them to win the Stanley Cup, even though they're down 2-0 right now.
I had them making the Cup.
Jason Robertson, like you said, 23 years old. He checks the youth and the star power, 109 points in 82 games, 46 goals. But like Jamie Benn, as much as we
There he
dog
is.
him
Yeah. I
because of,
wasn't even going to say his name. So, like,
but like as much as we dog him for the crappy plays and the dirty plays that he's done, he's taken a step back into a support role and he's been thriving. He's taken a step back out of the limelight. He's had 78 points this year in 33 games played. He's 33 years old. Their third best scorer, 38-year-old Joe Pavelski with 77 points in 82 games, 28 goals. Like, it's one of those situations. They have a mix of star power, youth, and, if you want to add a fourth category in there, veteran leadership's important too. I mean, Ryan Suter's 38 years old. He had 25 points this season. Not too bad, not too shabby. I know that contract, some people, his contract's not great still regardless, but like it's the fact that, they have this mix of depth, star power, youth. We haven't even mentioned Miro Heiskanen either. 73 points in 79 games played from a 23-year-old defenseman. Rupe Hintz, 26-year-old, 75 points in 73 games played, 37 goals. Like Dallas Stars, again, we talk about what these teams have, the Wings don't. These teams have youth, star power, depth. Again, Red Wings are working on the depth. They've got the youth, but they just lack that star power. And the Dallas Stars have that star power. The thing that's holding them back right now is I think that Jake Ottinger probably hasn't had the best playoffs. He's the only goalie amongst the four starters remaining, whose goal saved above expected is in the negatives. Yeah. And that's crazy from a guy who last season went balls to the wall to try and keep that team in the playoffs.
Insane run, yeah.
Yeah. And so, I mean, Jake Ottinger if he can figure it out, they're still going to be very much in this series. 2-0 doesn't mean crap. Of course, by the time people are listening to this, we know the outcome. And if they're down 3-0, it's basically writings on the wall. Yeah. But if they can steal a win here at home, right? At home against that, or are they on the road now? No, Dallas is at home. Yeah. I'm getting it confused because Florida 1-2 on the road to start the series. Then they're going to be right back in it. Jake Ottinger just has to go out there and play a good game, but his save percentage right now of .901 isn't going to do it when the other goalies in the playoffs are crushing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, on the flip side, you have another team that has crazy depth. The Vegas Golden Knights have a lot of production from everywhere. We just did this game with the Canes. The Knights have 10 players with 30 or more points and 12 with 25 or more points. And then they have Jack Eichel at the top, who was a point-a-game player in what he played 65, 67 games there. So yeah, like this is another team that has the ability to have a top-end over point-a-game caliber player when Eichel is on, and also has crazy good depth. So same song and dance, different team, really.
What's crazy too is the Vegas Golden Knights didn't have a single 40-goal scorer in their regular season either. And that's just wild to me with how deep that team is. I mean, Marsh to show. I butchered that, but I'm not going to try again. Jack Eichel, Riley Smith.
30-goal scorer.
Yeah, they didn't, but they had 3 guys who were 25-plus goal scorers.
Right.
I mean, they're just another team that's crazy deep down the middle. And Jack Eichel is, I think, the perfect type of leader that team needs.
Yeah. Eichel would have gotten 30 if he played 82.
Yes, absolutely. It's 66 and 67 games. He would have been right there in the mix. But they're a crazy deep team, and Aiden Hill, just like the other goalies, has kind of like gone balls to the wall. He's got a save percentage of .934, a goal saved above expected. I guess we got to add another thing on there. We talk about the 3 things. Maybe the 4th thing is that you need a goalie to get hot, because the 3 teams that are killing it right now.
Time and time again in the last decade of Stanley Cup run. I mean, we date back the last 20 years. Like, it doesn't matter. We've seen that a lot. We've seen so many postseasons and so many teams that have just gotten carried by. I don't want to say carried. Maybe that's too dramatic, but have found a lot of their success because of just fantastic goalie play at the right time.
Yeah, I mean, they're kind of like, I almost want to attribute it to them being like the Carolina Hurricanes, right? They had not a single player on their team hit 70 points. Of course, again, Eichel would have if he played a full 82, but he didn't. He only played 67. But they had 6 players hit over 50 points. So it's just the depth. They double-checked the depth scoring. And, they got a mix of youth and age as well. So youth and veteran leadership, but it's just goaltending, man. That'll get you real far in the playoffs. At Aiden Hill, who I remember hearing, Sharks fans joke about the fact that the Vegas Golden Knights were going to Aiden Hill to be their savior after, trading away a Vezina, literal Vezina winner at the time in Fleury, and then having Leonard have double hip surgery. Now it's like, oh, now Aiden Hill is going to be your savior, and he has been. 930 save percentage, goal saved above expected of like 6.
Well, and again, like we can just go down the list of like, I mean, we talked about Ottinger last year, like Montreal, right? Like their crazy run was in massive large part due to goaltending a couple of years ago. Talked about Nashville. Oh, I definitely said Tuukka Rask when talking about Nashville, and that's totally wrong. Pekka Rinne, obviously.
You did, and I was like, I wasn't sure if I caught that correctly.
No, that definitely is something that I screwed up on. But like Pekka Rinne back in what was that, 16, 17, like they were a 16 seed, right? They were the worst team in the playoffs.
I mean,
and made it all the way to the cup. Like,
isn't the Jonathan Quick just like the penultimate? Like he's
right?
He's
Yeah,
the
obviously.
guy.
I mean, we could literally have a half-hour show just talking about like incredible postseason runs by goaltenders that have carried their team.
But you can't predict that, right?
No,
like
obviously you can't. Obviously,
to put your goalie in a position to go balls to the wall, you do need those other 3 things. You need depth, you need youth, you need star power in some sort of fashion on your team. If you don't have the star power, you need extra of the depth of the youth. If you don't have the youth, you need extra of the depth of the star power. Like that's just how it works in the NHL. The Red Wings have the youth. They have Seider. They have Raymond. They have Casper. They have Edvinsson. They have, if they draft that 9th overall, if they don't trade that pick in a deep draft, they're going to have that. They have Johansson. They have Wallander. The depth-wise, it's getting better. Every single time one of these young guys makes it to the NHL roster, it helps solidify that roster. So the depth is getting there, but they just lack that star. And that star could be in the making. It could be one of those prospects. It could be Raymond yet. It could be Seider. I think Seider legitimately has a chance at being a star. I don't think he's going to be like a Cale Makar or Adam Fox type star. I think he's going to be more of a defensive defenseman. Yeah. But like the possibility is
basically
there.
A forward that lines up on the right side.
Same thing with Miro Heiskanen, right?
Like, that's a cheat code. Yeah.
So, I mean, the pieces are there a lot. A lot of the pieces are there for the Red Wings, but, you have 2 options. You have to either go out there and get that star, or you have to try and become the Carolina Hurricanes, where you just double down on depth to make up for the fact that you don't have that 40 goal score, 100-point score. Like that's the route. That's what separates the Red Wings. To go back to our original question, that's what separates the Red Wings from the teams in the conference finals right now.
Right. And no matter what route you're going to take, whether it's acquiring a star player or acquiring depth, or like you want to go crazy and try and get both, whatever, that all requires a ton of moves this offseason, because that is not currently how the roster is constructed. So this offseason still just remains very, very important if we want to get over that hump.
But again, $8 million under the floor, just one of your free agents, maybe 2 if you include, well, you're going to have to re-sign Veleno. You might re-sign Lindstrom, who's an RFA, might. Like, huge asterisks on that, because who knows about that rumor about him maybe going overseas. And then, like, we want you to re-sign Suter, but, like, those 3 players combined might not even get you the $8 million back to the cap floor. And then Yzerman, is going to spend. So, like, next year is, like, guaranteed to be an improvement roster-wise, right? Like, it's almost like it has to. How do you not improve over the players that are leaving this roster while trying to get to the cap floor? Like, it just
correct.
It seems like it's written in stone. It's just, who are you going to get, and how big of an impact are they going to have? So,
absolutely.
We got a long off season to talk about that. I mean, we're coming up soon here. Probably in June, we'll start doing free agent primers. So that'll be fun. I'm doing a lot more prospect profiles.
Stuff, I'm sure, too. Yeah.
So just trying to make it to June.
Yes, sir. This was a fun conversation, though.
It was a fun conversation. We haven't talked a lot about the playoffs. There was just so much going on with the playoffs for so long. It was hard to like pick a couple teams. But now that you're down to 4, we'll probably talk about the Stanley Cup final once we get there as well.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So we'll do this same exact episode again, just about the final. No, I'm just kidding. We'll be back. Maybe, though. Maybe. Long off season, right? That's what I keep saying. Maybe. Maybe. Who knows? We'll be back with a new episode tomorrow. Scotty, any final thoughts, bro?
We ball.
We do ball. We'll be back with a new episode tomorrow. Same time, same place. It's your team every day.
Every day.